I wanted to get to this Leafs Panthers matchup and Brad Marchand's
Okay.
latest quote. What did you make of that, and why should I care what Brad Marchand has to say about the Maple Leafs?
He's in Nick's head.
Big
Brad
time.
Marchand lives in everybody's head, and it only works if you allow him to. He's teaching everybody a great lesson here about how, and like, first of all, Brad doesn't do anything frivolously. I don't believe. I don't think you guys believe that Brad Marchand does anything frivolously at all. Everything he does on the ice is deliberate, and everything he says off the ice is deliberate. And a lot of it has a thin veil of a compliment when really it's just turning the dagger even more, turning the heat up and turning the dagger even more. I think why it burns is um, I think what Brad Marchand understands is where the sensitive spots are on teams, and the sensitivities are always where things are the weakest. And where things are the weakest for the Toronto Maple Leafs are where they're true, right? And I think we're used to in the NHL, people sort of always sort of covering up reality to produce a nice, respectful story. But Brad Marchand is not shy about, even though he may phrase it as a compliment, it's really a backhand compliment, and he's the master of it. Why does he live in your head? Because you allow him to. There's a great lesson. There's a great lesson that I learned years and years ago from a yoga teacher. We were talking about criticism, and she said, "How do you handle criticism?" And I said, "Well, listen, I've chosen to live my profession publicly, so I assume that everyone's going to take a shot. I get it. Like that's the nature of the business, assumed risk." And she said, "Here's what you need to understand." I said, "What's that?" She goes, "In your life, you're going to meet people who love you, and you're going to meet people who hate you. And what your job is to understand is none of it has anything to do with you. That's just where they are in their life." So that, Nick, is my long-winded answer of saying that's more about you than him.
Funny, I'm newer to this game than you guys are, and the first couple negative comments or something, I'm just like, oh, like, do I change what I do, and what does he mean by that? And
No,
and then sometimes
never.
you'll write back or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, I forgot you followed me. What's up, Rosie? How's it going? And then we're buddies. It's like, oh, you didn't really like. It's weird, right? And I've learned now that who these people are and why they're doing it doesn't really have anything to do with you. They just need to
Nothing to do
vent
with
or get
you.
something. It's funny, and now I couldn't care less. It's kind of funny, but it takes a while to learn. But with what Marchand said, like going to the Leafs, whether that was backhanded or spinning the dagger, like I think he just said what he believes because he doesn't really have a leg to stand on to be playing mind games right now with where his team's at. But what he did say is they're 4 points out. They actually have a lot of good pieces in there. And if you think they're out of the playoffs, you're crazy. Do you take stock to that? Do you agree with it?
I think that, first of all, I think that it's bizarre that here we are on December 2nd, and the matchup tonight between the Eastern Conference's bottom two teams are Florida and Toronto. Like, hands up who said that would be a thing on December the 2nd. Technically, he's right. Because the East, outside of, like, look, Tampa's on a run right now, and they look really good. Carolina is always consistent, and that's a really good team. But nobody has really distinguished themselves like Colorado has, like Dallas has. Of recent note, like the Minnesota Wild have. No one's really jumped out and distinguished themselves in the Eastern Conference yet. So everybody technically is still in it. I think from a Maple Leafs point of view, though, I just don't see any evidence so far. And again, health is, of course, a mitigating factor, although don't tell Tampa that. I just don't see any evidence that this team has right now any evidence laid before us that they can go on any kind of run that's going to get them back into the conversation. Technically, he's right, but we all watch the games. You guys watch more of it than I do. Am I off base here? Like, am I missing something? Like, should I be seeing something here that as a Maple Leafs fan would give you reason to say, don't worry, they can go 8 for their next 10? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's my thinking too, is like, yeah, it was great to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. But I think the biggest thing now, Marek, is consistency and stringing a bunch of games together. Like I'm at a point, I've been very positive with this team. I'm at a point where I'm not out, but I want to see something now. I don't know if you're the same way with this Maple Leafs team.
Yeah, I think you're with the Maple Leafs on that, because now here we are. This is like the first evaluation, right? Like if you just go quarterly to quarterly to quarter, like this is the first evaluation of your team. Okay, so we have enough runway here. We've had a look under the hood. We've seen this car drive in the city. We've seen the car drive on the highway. We know what it can do. Now, how do we react? Positively, negatively, or are we still in wait and see mode? And right now, if you're a Maple Leafs fan or if you're in the Maple Leafs organization, you're a combination of you're not impressed, but you're still a little bit in wait and see mode. That has to change probably soon, or else the season just completely gets away from you. And as we all know, the pressures in the city and the pressures on the general manager, I don't think that they're going to look at this and say, you know what, it's not there this year. Let's take a step back. I don't think that this organization right now with these players and this management group is built that way and want to do that, although some may maintain it would be the smartest thing to do. I think the pressures are going to be immense to try to do something. And when you have your back up against the wall like that, sometimes you get rushed into making moves that otherwise, A, wouldn't be prudent, and B, you don't want to make. That's the scary thing about this Maple Leaf situation right now. But having said that, you look at the Atlantic, and outside of Tampa, like who's jumping out at you that you say like, A, they're playing great, and B, we can see it sustain. And I think maybe that's part of what Brad Marchand is saying as well. Like, this is still a really good team here with really good pieces. They haven't hit their stride, and nobody else is really distinguishing themselves. And no one really believes that a lot of the teams that are in there can do this long term, including Brad Marchand's old team, the Boston Bruins.
Mm-hmm. And I guess you kind of touched on it there in your answer of this organization's probably not wired to take that step back, but everyone's had their opinion with what's going on. Fire this guy, fire that guy, tank for this, or rebuild, or trade everyone, or stay the course. What is it for you? Is there a line? People talk about American Thanksgiving. People talk about Christmas. Is there a line for you where you're like, there's no coming back from it this season, and you think that they would need to change course? What is that date or situation for you?
Great question. This year's the freak in the Eastern Conference, right? In the West, some teams have already bottomed out, right? Like the Nashville Predators are Exhibit A. Teams have bottomed out in the West. Teams haven't completely bottomed out in the East yet, which is why I still don't think we have a line yet. Like there's a lot of extra points floating out there every single night, right? There's a lot of bonus points that are floating out there. There's the number we talk about, is our injuries up? Feels like it. Is fighting up? Yes, fighting is up. And also, our extra points being handed out up. And the answer is yeah. There's a lot more specifically in the East than in the West. There's a lot of bonus points that are floating out there. A lot of teams going into overtime, or a lot of games going into overtime, a lot of games going to shootouts right now. And that's why everything is so packed and everything is so clogged. Now you can call it, this is parity. You can say this is mediocrity. And really we're just doing a semantic dance by saying nobody's out of it, because there's always bonus points that are floating around that perhaps you can say artificially makes everybody look more similar than different, and really just sort of pushes that Thanksgiving line, Rosie, further down the road. But I don't think we have a date yet or a line, because this is like, I'll be honest, this is a freakish year. This is a freakish year for trying to figure out like what's fool's gold, who's legit, who's a pretender, who's a contender, all those things. This year's been a freak so far. In the East.
They're lucky, ... You can make that case for several teams, specifically in the Eastern Conference. But let's put over one of our friends, Bruce Boudreau. An evolving story again this year has been this power play, man. They're unwatchable, 10 for 63. Gabby wants to coach. He wants to be in the Leafs organization. I don't know why they don't at least make a call. You want to be an advisor? Like, I think he can do wonders for this power play. Do you agree?
So, well, yeah. And the other thing about Gabby too is like right away when you talk about, morale and spirit of the team, you know what Gabby does to a room. And I do understand, like whenever I say that, I'm always reminded of myself whenever you hear like, oh, he's a good guy in the room. Yeah, Marek, they don't flood the room. Okay, buddy, like they don't flood the room. Like I want players, but 82 games is a long time, and January, February, and the dog days, like it's a long time. You need some positivity around, and Gabby brings that as well. I will tell you one thing about Bruce, and he's always maintained this, and I believe this is true even to this day. Bruce Boudreau has always wanted to, and still does want to, be a head coach in the NHL. He sees himself as a head coach. He's been a head coach. He's had success at every single level. Like, he's won every single championship that he could, except for the Stanley Cup. The only team, he's always said this, the only team that he would work as an assistant for are the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's the team, in the west end of Toronto where he grew up. That's the team he grew up cheering for. That's a team that he played for in the NHL. That's the one team that he still has a strong affinity for as a player, and that's the one team that he's always wanted to be in his professional coaching life associated with. So to your point, Nick, like if it was for one specific duty or one specific assistant coach role, I think Bruce Boudreau would be more than interested in killing our podcast and jumping behind the bench for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, speaking of coaches, there's 3 or 4 low points that stand out in my mind from this season. Yep. A lot of noise about everything and anything, including firing Craig Berube. What was, during those low points, your take on that position?
Boy, well, first of all, like I've always maintained, if your goal is to win the Stanley Cup, you're kind of theoretically betting on the wrong horse from a historical point of view. There's only been 3 coaches in the history of the NHL who have ever won the Stanley Cup with multiple teams. There was Tommy Gorman, there was Dick Irvin Sr., and there was Scotty Bowman. Scotty actually won it with 3 teams, but he's the greatest coach of all time. That's it. If you're looking to play like the odds based on history, then you're better off getting someone who hasn't won the Stanley Cup before. Craig Berube, of course, won the Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. Jordan Binnington was hot. The team caught on fire. A lot of the defensive groundwork had been laid by a previous coaching regime, and things just started to click after they refused to waive Jay Bouwmeester and didn't send Pat Maroon to the minors, et cetera, and called up Jordan Binnington, and he went on this historic run. So I looked at the hiring initially skeptically, because if it's your goal to win the Stanley Cup, if you want to play the odds from history, you're better off to get a newbie who hasn't won the Stanley Cup. The odds are just more in your favor. I could understand it, because at that point, Rosie, like, everybody was looking for the excuse. I don't think that there was any appetite really from management to fire Brad Treliving. I know, every time the Leafs would lose, you check to see if Peter DeBoer's name was trending on Twitter. I get that. The one thing about DeBoer is that he can take really good teams and get them to a conference final, get them to a Stanley Cup final. Hasn't been able to get a team over that hump yet. But he has had a lot of success, most recently, of course, with Dallas, wherever he's gone. But I kind of looked at that, the coach, the fire the coach discussion as being really, really premature here.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.